interesting thing, because probably most of us at some terrible point in our childhood has wished a parent dead. It's just most of us don't have a parent end up dead after that happens. And so, of course, you wind up with this Hilliker curse. And you talk very honestly in this book about how, in many ways, you exploited the death of your mother. I mean, you got a first memoir, My Dark Places, out of also going back and looking for your mother's killer. And, you know, this sort of search for it when you know in many ways you knew you would never really find him.
I have a raging will to be happy and fulfilled. I am devoid of self-pity. I only go forward. My second ex-wife quoted Clifford Odets and called me a bullet with nothing but a future. And she's correct in that. I chose to be happy early on. Obsession had me. I could ignore Jean Hilliker, or I could consistently place her in fictional contexts, different eras in American history, rewrite her life to my own specifications while retaining her bedrock psyche and soul, and I've honored her in memoir form twice. There is a level of exploitation to that, to be sure. My next novel, not the novel I'm writing now, I will deploy my mother and her real life circumstances, where she was and what she was doing at the time, fictionally.
So that's the project that you're working on now.
Next.
We were talking earlier, and I've been telling a lot of people about the Hilliker curse, which I have recently finished, that I really feel that this book is probably, well, definitely, the most emotionally revealing memoir that I have read, written by either a man or a woman. I have never seen anybody really reveal themselves in any book this way. You really don't pull any punches. It does not seem to me that you really hold anything back in this book. And you write quite amazingly of a crack-up you have not long after the book The Cold 6000 comes out. And it's very eloquent, and it's also just very naked on the page when you do that. And I would like to ask you if you would read that section for us, a small bit of it, because the part when you're towards the end of the tour.
Okay. I didn't look bad. The tall and gaunt thing had always worked for me. My internal clock was desprung, resprung, and unsprung. My brain stuttered, sputtered, sparked, and always caught ignition. The cities blurred by. I kept looking in my mouth. I saw bumps and tooth marks and anointed them cancer. My tongue played over saliva cysts and made them metastasize. I ran to mirrors and checked my mouth 50 times a day. Cities swerved by. I fell into a fugue state. The book went on the New York Times bestseller list. The critical consensus held firm as megalomania. My pass-out sleep was worse than no sleep. The bed fell out from under me and took the world with it. I looked at women on airplanes and had sobbing fits. People started looking at me. I did bookstore events every night. I performed introductory shtick, read from my novel, and took questions. I was electrifyingly good in the middle of a meltdown. I always played to one woman in the audience. I made it to Toronto. The book stayed on the list. Women caught me staring at them and looked away. It horrified me. I willed my eyes elsewhere. The effort made me lightheaded. I lost track of where I was. Evil lad, you always thought you never hurt them. Now they see you. I got to Chicago. The tour was halfway done. I went to dinner with colleagues and walked to the can. The walls tumbled and compressed. I retained my balance and walked toward a restaurant in Toronto. It wasn't there. I ran outside and recognized Chicago. I ran back inside and found my colleagues. It got worse. The cancer cell migration moved through my mouth. I made it to Milwaukee. I weaved into an elevator at the Pfister Hotel. 3 very tall black men evil-eyed me. I weaved and mimicked them. I made it to the penthouse floor intact. Reporters were waiting there. I thought they were Ellroy fans. I was wrong. Basketball playoffs were raging. The black guys were the Milwaukee Bucks. The presidential suite, mine for one night. History was my oyster. The JFK that my characters killed had shacked up right here. Brother, you the man! I walked through the suite. Fuck, it was huge. The floor rolled. I walked into the world's largest gilt and marble bathroom and walked back out. The world flew off its axis. Lights throbbed and dimmed as I collapsed in slow motion and hit a silk brocade bed.
That is great. He reads, there's an audio version of him reading that whole memoir. It's
Buy it now.
It is, well, buy the book and
Right,
get
right.
that, because it's quite amazing to hear you read this whole thing.
Thank
You really, there's no one else can read it. You just don't do it justice. You remember how that feels? Because, you know, to write memoir, you have to go back there, right? You have to go back to how that feels, to get it on the page. I mean, talk about writing that again and having to relive. I can't imagine going back and reliving this crack up.
I had a driver drive me from Chicago to Milwaukee. I was going to see 2 cousins of mine, my mother's sister's kids, that night. I wanted to get the hell back to Kansas City and see my second ex-wife, who I was still married to at the time. They had a small room waiting for me. I'm grandiose, it wasn't good enough for me. I slipped the desk guy 200 bills to get me the penthouse suite. He slipped me the key on the QT off the record and very hush-hush. Walked into the elevator. The 3 very tall black cats were there, along with a man who was several inches shorter than me and covered in tattoos. Turned out to be an esteemed basketball player named Allen Iverson. This was explained to me later on. Checked out the hotel suite, and it was huge. This was the white trash comfort zone to which I had long aspired, and I never wanted to leave. Walked into the can to drain the lizard, walked back out, and everything went like that. There was an overhead light, lower down than that light right there, and it was like my eyes and my brain were a movie camera tilted on its side like this. And I'm damn lucky the bed was there, or I would have hit my head.
And I mean, this is a time where it should all be going perfectly for you. because your book is doing well. It's a huge success. You're in the midst of these books that you think are going to revolutionize fiction, and everyone is
And
worshiping.
have.
Yeah, and everyone is telling you how great you are.
Yeah.
And you're convinced that you have a million kinds of cancers, and you're spending all your time looking in the mirror, and you're in the midst of this crack up. And now you have to revisit this to write it, and then you're writing the hell out of it in this memoir.
I only know how to write the shit out of things. I don't go on to the next sentence until I believe that it's perfect. So I'm not going to stiff you folks out here in Litquake land, book land, or audio book land, and I'm not going to stiff God or myself on this.
Oh my God.
Looking back at my wild-ass life, I may as well tell you the truth and give it to you as artfully as I can. Truth be told, it was a relief, but not an exorcism, to write this book, because I always address the phenomenon of my individual life. Not that it is individually phenomenological. Each and every one of you live in the phenomenon of your own individual lives. I address my life from the standpoint of how do I avoid the misconduct that I've evinced previously and not pull the same old shit over and over again. And that was very much what spurred me on to write the Ellroy Curse.
But to write memoir, and to do what you're talking about, to go and to write it about how you're not going to be doing that same thing over. I mean, memoir is hard. I mean, I'm always saying memoir is basically psychoanalysis practiced on yourself by an amateur. And then get that on the page. Did you find that a lot harder than doing fiction?
No, it was easier because I understood the themes. My Dark Places, misogynistic violence. The Ellroy Curse, the conjunction of men and women. Misogynistic violence and all its horror is much larger than I am. Ditto, the conjunction of men and women. I would not have written these books if I had not had universal themes to hitch my personal story to. Other than that, you're dealing in solipsism, you're a pain in the ass, and nobody gives a fucking shit.
So you think you're done with the memoirs now? Because
Yes.
we got to say the Ellroy Curse has a good happy ending.
It does have a happy ending.
So you would be pretty done with the memoirs.
I said I was done with memoir when I wrote My Dark Places. One never knows.